Haughmond Abbey is a ruined Augustinian monastery a few miles from Shrewsbury, England. It was probably founded in the early 12th century and was closely associated with the Fitzalan family, who became Earls of Arundel. Though the abbey portrayed a godly appearance, it had, at times, been a place of anguish, and those tormented spirits still dwell in the ruins. The picturesque ruins of Haughmond Abbey attracts thousands of visitors a year, and for the most part, these visitors experience nothing out of the ordinary. However, there are cases of unusual activity, like orbs of light which pass through walls, and the sound of a monk chanting. On a late afternoon in the summer of 2013, a photographer was visiting the ruins to update his portfolio. A sudden storm blew in, and the photographer dashed into the chapter house to shelter from the rain. Stood in a corner was a man dressed as a monk. The photographer commented on the weather's turn for the worse, but the monk merely nodded and remained silent. A few minutes passed, with the photographer trying to make small talk about a variety of subjects, but the monk would only reply with a nod. Believing that the monk was a reenactor staying in character, the photographer took a few steps back and took a picture. He then smiled at the monk and turned away to take a wider picture of the chapter house. When he turned back, the monk had vanished. Thinking nothing more of this encounter, the photographer continued with his task once the rain had passed. As he went to leave, the photographer remarked to the volunteer at the entrance of the monk's behaviour, which he had found a little rude. The volunteer said that there were no reenactors, and in fact the photographer was the only person visiting at the time. Adamant that he had seen and spoke to a man dressed as a monk, the photographer flicked through the pictures on his camera to prove it. He came to the pictures taken in the chapter house, but there was no monk to be seen. This monk has been sighted numerous times over the past 100 years or so. It has been seen walking through the arched doorways of the chapter house and across to the processional doorway of the church, before fading away. Other sightings are of a nun who is seen walking up and down the dormitory. It may seem odd for the spirit of a nun to be haunting a place where only men were permitted, but a canonical visitation in 1521 revealed that a woman of ill repute was visiting the abbey, disguising herself as a nun to apply her trade in the monks' dormitory. Further evidence of abuses appeared before the abbey's dissolution in 1539. The abbots Richard Ponsonbury and Christopher Hunt were notorious for their wrongdoings, and were responsible for allowing the monks to fall into ungodly behaviour. It is believed that both Richard Ponsonbury and Christopher Hunt are still in visitation of the abbey they once cruelly reigned over. A couple, on hearing that the ruins were haunted, decided to visit during the nighttime hours. They claim that at the strike of midnight, a black mist rose from the ruins and the air turned deathly cold. Shadows emerged from this mist and formed a procession which went into the chapter house, where it disappeared. Another group visiting at night report the same mist and other chanting coming from the chapter house. When they went to investigate the sound, they saw gathered around the font several black monks that disappeared when they got close. A more bizarre sighting is of a headless horseman whose hoofbeats are heard long before any sighting. Witnesses to this apparition described it as a robed figure, all in black, that emits a green mist from where its head should be. This horseman is said to ride into the infirmary garden, where it rears up on its back legs and screeches before dispersing like smoke in the wind. The most common sighting is of a woman looking out of the window of the Tudor mansion house, the old abbot's lodgings. Many visitors have experienced this apparition watching them as they approach the ruins, only then to vanish when they get close. Skeptics outrightly dismiss any of the mentioned sightings, explaining them as tricks of the mind and the made-up tales of paranormal fanatics. But the truth comes down to one question: do you believe?